Catherine Philbert Lewis, welcome to Untapped Potential.
Thank you for having me, Simone. Thank you so much.
Yes, certainly. So you are the Director of Emergency Preparedness at Consolidated Energy of New York, better known as ConEd.
I am. So I've been with the company for close to 20 years, actually. So this particular role, I'm in this particular role for about 3 years. It's interesting. It certainly is not my background. So that in itself is something that's interesting and challenging for me. I've had a number of positions in the company. So I started off in human resources, which is my background actually. And then I worked in both field operations in customer ops and customer assistance. And then I worked in emergency management at the time we were called. And later on got promoted into the group and we rebranded and now we're known as Emergency Preparedness. And like I mentioned before, I've been doing that for 3 years. And yes, it is ConEd. We are the utility in New York City. We do have there are other utilities in the wider New York State, but we are the one for New York City. And I know for people who live in New York, we've been in the news recently and not necessarily great. But you know, we've had a lot of challenges, but it's ConEd is the utility there.
Yes, and I want to talk a lot about what you're doing at ConEd, and I'm certainly familiar with ConEd because I lived in New York City for 10 years, so you guys took a lot of my money.
We hear it all the time.
Let's just go back a little bit and tell us what the transition was like for you moving from Dominica, which is where you're originally from, to New York. What was that transition like for you?
So initially I came up for school and the plan was always to go home when I'm done. And I remember looking for jobs and feeling out different prospective positions and stuff like that because I always wanted to go home. I had zero intentions of staying here. And then I had a number of jobs up here as I went to school. I worked at Sears for a number of years and they had put me through their management training program and stuff like that. So at some point I started to think, I wonder if the opportunities that I have here would be the same when I go home. So, and that's the reality I think a lot of us face when we come up for studies. I think a lot of us want to go home, but the reality is the opportunities that we would have up here are not that much when you compare them to back home. So anyway, I guess at that point, my career, I would say, started taking off. I left Sears. I started work at ConEd, and I liked it. And I had gotten married up here and gone through the process. So obviously I became a citizen. So that part of, I think that's a big part. When you come up here, you always worry about, do I stay up here and become a citizen or go back home and whatever, because it makes it easier. It's a process. So having gone through that, I think staying up here just became the clearer option. I started working at ConEd, so I was building my career there. Most of my family had already migrated, so that made the decision even that much easier. And then I decided to stay. I was building my life. I had a kid, and it's something that happened. I still go home as much as I can, right? I try to do that. My father was in Dominica until 2 years ago. He passed away, so I still had people there. I do have a sister that's there, and then family members. We still have cousins and aunts and stuff that are there, and uncles. But the majority of my family, like my mom, my brother, a lot of my aunts and other cousins and stuff have migrated here. So we all here, and it just became that this is where we are. But it's always, at home. And like I said, we try to go home as much as I can.
Yeah, I think you hit on a very important point that for many of us, we were thinking of going back home. But when you look at the opportunities here, and the one thing I want people to know is that the transition to come into this country is not an easy one. And I'm not sure if you had that experience, but one of the first things I actually had to work on was simply changing the way I spoke.
Oh, that was
I did not realize how much slang we use in Dominica.
Right. So it's interesting you say that because when people now listen to, not just me, friends that I have that are from Dominica and stuff like that, I always like, oh, you yanking or you putting on an accent, but it's really not that. It's a matter of survival. Because honestly, a lot of times people would say, what did you say? Or not understand the words that we were using because we were talking as if we were in Dominica. So you have to adjust. You have to adjust to it where people can understand you. That was just one thing. And then we use a lot of slang, which in a professional setting, you're not able to do that, or people don't understand or they can't identify. So you have to do that. You have to make that adjustment. I mean, and it's minor in the grand scheme of things when you talk about challenges, you know, going through the process to live up here, but it's a reality. So it's not so much having to change your accent or, you know, stuff like that. You have to adjust so that you can fit in, so to speak, and people can understand you.
Yeah, you have to get used to adjusting, because can you imagine just a simple thing as my name was an issue, because in Dominica we say Simone.
Right.
In America they say Simone.
Exactly.
So I was constantly having to say what my name is, and then eventually I say, you know what? I'm just gonna say Simone because it is too hard to keep telling people my name is Simone.
Right.
Yeah, certainly.
So pronunciation and stuff like that. Yeah.
So speaking about challenges, what were some of the challenges you would say you faced while you were rising at ConEd?
So, I mean, one, being from the Caribbean, right? So that in itself, I mention that all the time. People looking at you like, are you really qualified to be there, right? And who is this person who's not American, female, Black, in the role that she's in? So it not so much, I won't say that there was a lot of adversity. When I worked in the company, I was fortunate to have a lot of people that supported me right from the beginning along the way and, you know, helping me navigate and stuff like that. But it's hard work. It's hard work. I think the biggest challenge is setting yourself apart from the other great workers that the company has. So ConEd has over 10,000 employees. And how do you stand out in the 10,000 employees to move up through the ranks? It's not an easy thing. You have to make sure that you're visible. You have to make sure that you're networking adequately. You have to make sure that you have the right sponsors and people that support you, and that you're showing that you can do the work. And all of these things put together in itself is a challenge, but you have to be up for it. You really have to be up for it to do it. And I think setting yourself apart is a huge thing. It is. And understanding the culture that you're working in. It's not the same as being home. It's a different culture up here altogether. It's just so vast and so different that
I am so happy you mentioned that, because one of the things that I found most challenging when I started working here is how openly Americans talk about their personal lives. Kathy.
Yes.
At home, we never talk about our personal lives at home. That was the strangest thing. And then it makes you feel isolated because you're not as willing to share your personal life on the job, but everybody else is expecting you to.
I was just going to say, in their minds, it's networking. So when people talk about networking, it's being at the after work social event and having those conversations, or meeting someone in the hallway and being willing to talk about your son, your kids, your home life. And all these things were foreign to me, because it's like you come to work, you focus on the work, you do that and you leave. But no, a big part of it up here is bringing who you are forward to the job. And whether you choose to be 100% authentic, because you're obviously not going to tell them everything that's going on in your life, but they expect you to share part of that. And that's how people figure out they get to know you. That's what makes you seem human, so to speak, to other people. So if that's how you connect. That's one of the ways that people connect up here, is doing just that. That was not, back home, it's not part of our culture to do that at all. It's not. So that was a big challenge for me. And then just naturally, I'm an introvert. So
me too.
It's come, let me do my job, leave me alone, right? But it's like you make the extra effort to be among people that you're not necessarily accustomed to or comfortable with, but you have to force yourself to have the conversations and put yourself out there and be in the uncomfortable space and do the networking. It's a huge part of success. I think out of the biggest lessons that I've learned throughout the years is being able to do that successfully. If people don't know who you are, you're not getting promoted, you're not being recognized. People have to know who you are. And
And it seems a little bit unfair, because you could be a star performer, and if the right people do not know who you are, because you're not willing to have those conversations, you're not willing to put yourself out there, you will be bypassed.
Exactly. You will. You absolutely will. You absolutely will. I remember prior to this job, I had a boss, and he did it so successful. I mean, I used to admire. He would turn every opportunity into a networking. So whether we were doing a business meeting, he found time at the end to have those conversations. He did it. He was just brilliant about doing it. And then I remember saying to him, like, how do you work this? Like, how do you do it? And surprisingly, he was an introvert, but he says it was a conscious decision. You have to do it. And he recognized early on, if you don't make that a part of your business interactions, just be prepared to stay at the level that you are. When people's names come up in discussions for promotions and different things like that, is because people know you. They know you on the work level, and your work has to speak for itself. But people have to be able to say something personal about you that they know, in order for you to be able to be brought into the fold. They have to.
Yeah, certainly. So thank you for sharing that with us. And now, if you're just joining us, we're speaking to Miss Catherine Philbert Lewis, and you're in Long Island, right?
I am in Long Island.
Yes, out in Long Island. She is the Director of Emergency Preparedness at ConEd, and we're super proud of her because she is of Dominican heritage. She was actually born in Dominica. We went to the convent high school together. Yep. I know I brought on a few people from convent high school, so forgive me. These are the folks I know. So if anybody knows anybody else from another school, we'd be happy to have them as well. So we're just talking about the differences of working in Dominica versus working up here in the US, and what it takes to be successful, the adversity you will face up here, but what it takes to be successful in the American climate in terms of work. Now, Kathy, don't get me started on office politics. Did you face any challenges with that?
That is huge. Oh my God, it's huge. I remember someone saying directly to me, you have to be very cognizant of the office politics. Just like that. Those were the exact words. Who knows who, right? Who is close to whose family, who hangs out on the weekend. You have to be in tune to that for a couple of reasons, right? So you know who you're having certain discussions with, obviously. And then if it helps to, in case you want to make a connection with somebody else, you can do that through, someone that's a mutual connection. But the last thing that you want to do is to say something that may prevent you from moving ahead, right? For instance, if you don't like a particular way, maybe somebody handled a situation, you may be correct, but it's a matter of who you tell and how you tell it, and how does that word get back. So, it is, and I think I've worked a couple of companies here, and it's all the same. So it's not unique, I think, to any one industry or corporation. It's just part of business. And it pays. It pays to be aware of your work politics. It does.
And then we have to get beyond that whole thing about, well, this is who I am, and if they don't like it, they can leave it, because especially for people like you and me who are natural introverts, it is especially difficult to have that constant interaction and building relationships. It's just not natural for us. We want to keep our heads down. We want to do a good job, and we want to go home.
Right. It's draining, actually. It's
yes,
draining.
It is.
Like I remember working the days where it's like you almost want to come home and just shut down because you've exhausted so much of yourself in the office doing work and stuff like that. It's exhausting. It's not natural. So it's an extra put on for people who are introverts. It really is. But you have to. I can't stress how much that sitting in the corner, putting your head down is not, if that's what you want to do and you're comfortable with saying, all right, this is my position and I'm good there, then all well and good. But if you have aspirations to do more, you do have to put yourself out there, and you will be in the uncomfortable position of having to network and having to raise your head and have the conversations and network and do all these things. You have to.
So essentially you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
You have to. You do. And I remember, I think, as you do it, it gets easier. I think you need to you learn how to manage being in the situations where you're not 100% comfortable. It's not that at the end you're not still going to be exhausted after you've drained all your energy, but you learn to navigate those better. You learn how to step away from conversations that you may not particularly want to have, and maybe navigate to another group who's having a different conversation, or you learn yourself to steer the conversation in the way that you want it, right? So if you're more comfortable about talking a football because your son plays football, then it's easy to bring that up. And then right away, you have a conversation you're comfortable with, and then the other people engaging also are comfortable. So you kind of learn to do these things along the way, but in the beginning, it's not easy.
Yeah, I like that idea. And that is actually something I used a lot when I worked 9 to 5. Now, you mentioned your son. So while you were doing all this, earning your bachelor's, your master's degree, ascending at ConEd, you also had a young son. So what was that experience like for you?
So that was hard. And I mean, thankfully, and I say that all the time, I think I owe my success to my family. I could not have done it without the support system. My aunt, very early on, before my mom moved here, my aunt was up here. She left her job to take care of my son.
She did.
She absolutely did. And she took care of my son until he was ready to go to pre-K. So I didn't have to, because a big concern for me was, how am I supposed to go to work? And you hear all the horror stories of people taking care of kids and what they go through and the abuse and so many different things. And you worry about that, right? I worried about it. So very early on, when my son was born, she said she would do it. And we were fortunate at the time. I was still married. So we were fortunate at the time to have her do that for us. And that absolutely helped me to be able to concentrate on work and school and finish off my degrees and do better. And then once my son was older and in school, my mom ended up moving up here. So I had her available to help me pick my son up from school, or if there was something going on at the school where I couldn't get to it, she would step in. So I owe everything to them. Without a support system, I don't think that I could have been able to do it. I often think back of so many things like, wow, if they weren't there, like I wouldn't have been able to do X, Y, Z. You have to have that support system, especially as a single parent, quote unquote. You need it. There's no way that you can do it alone. ConEd is a company that we respond to emergencies, right? So we provide electricity and we respond to it. So when there's a storm event or anything that affects the electricity, we have to work. So when there's 6 inches to 12 inches of snow on the ground and the mayor is saying stay home, I have to go into work because my company is responding to outages. And I would not have been able to do that had it not been for my mom. I remember when it was the hurricane we had in October of 2012, and Sandy, Superstorm Sandy. And I remember a tree had just fallen, almost didn't miss my house, but scraped the house. And I remember looking at it and like leaving to go and get in my car to get to work and thinking, all right, when I get back, I'll deal with it.
Wow.
But my son was home and my mom was home, but I had to get to work. 2018, when we had the Riley Quinn snowstorms and you could hardly move, I had to jump and get to work. So it's just part of my reality. It's what I signed up for. But thankfully, my mom was there to step in to help me with that. Otherwise, I honestly don't know what I would have done. I definitely wouldn't have been as far as I am. And I couldn't have done this job for sure.
And I can identify with you because, I work from home. I teach online. And even with that, Kathy, I needed my mother. My mom pretty much came down here for the first before Sophia was even born, and she stayed 8 months, and she's been coming down every year since then because I needed the support. I mean, between and then the emotional support from my in-laws, I mean, you just need that guidance because they hand you this newborn baby in the hospital.
Right.
And you're thinking to myself, okay, what am I supposed to do with this human being? And you want to make the right decisions and the right choices. So having, our aunts and our moms and anybody else who can help is certainly very valuable.
It is. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of it.
So now it seems like you've had several roles at ConEd, and they all seem to be different. So how did you navigate that? How did you go from one role to the next? Did you at some point have to kind of like fake it to be able to make it?
So my background is in human resources and I have my degree in labor relations. So I did that for a number of years in the company. So when we were talking career development, part of what I had said to my manager was, how do I provide support to groups where I don't even know what work they do? So I said to her, I think I need to go out to the field and work in the organization and then come back in HR. That was always the plan. So the first group I ended up doing that with, I ended up getting a position. And you go through the normal process. You apply and you interview and stuff like that at that level. And I ended up getting a job in field operations, which are the meter readers and collections and the people who go out in the field. And talk about difficult. I mean, I had never worked in the field before, so I have field guys and ladies reporting to me as part of my team. the work I had never done. I did not understand the business. That I think was probably my most challenging job because it was the first that was not part of what I had done in school. So there was nothing to reference because I hadn't done that work. So I really had to, and not so much about faking it till you make it. I think you have to find a way. So my process there was relying on the people who worked with me as part of my team. They knew the work, and having to humble myself and understand that, all right, you have to learn from these people. And that's what I did. And I ended up working there for like a year and a half.
But can I interrupt you just 1 minute, Kathy? Because I'm thinking to myself, here you have people in the field. So I'm thinking of myself as the person in the field. And you're coming in and you're less experienced than me, but you're supervising me, Kathy. I don't really think I would appreciate you. So how did you navigate that?
So there was a lot of that, and there is a lot of that. So one thing is, I'll say that point and then I'll go back to the question. So one thing that I've noticed in the corporate world up here is that there's a lot of that, because generally when you put people in positions of leadership, you're not looking necessarily for them to do the work. You're looking for them to direct and or manage the work. And typically if you find someone who's good with people and being able to manage people and develop relationships and high emotional intelligence, they can work with the people to get the job done. So essentially, you're really just managing that whole process. So of course, yes, when I got to the field, that was huge. You know, who is this young girl? And at the time I was younger, coming in to tell us how to do our work, because she's never worked in the field. She's never worked in customer ops. She knows nothing about our business. But, you know, you have to be humble in situations like that. And it's really, I worked long and hard to develop my relationships there with the people. And that's the only way that I got through. So you learn who you can trust and you learn who you cannot trust. And then you learn who the key people are and who you need to depend on to get the work done, and what your key directives are or objectives are that you need to accomplish. And then you work on that. There were times where I was fooled or led down the wrong path, but then you learn quickly and you pick up, right? And then you kind of know now, okay, you don't go to this person, or you can't trust that network to give you the right information. But you figure that out. You figure it out. And then once you have once I had my key people that I knew who I could rely on to get the work done, then it was fine. They didn't bring me there to do the work. They wanted me to accomplish goals and objectives and meet certain key performance indicators. And that's what I worked to do. We had the people doing the actual work. It was just me being able to connect with them. So my lack of experience in their world was less of an issue, because they saw that my concern was with a couple of things, right? Helping them to do their jobs better, and as an organization, making sure that we reached our goals. So after some time, you know, you kind of get to that point, but it's a lot of work to build trust and to get people's buy-in to accept you in a position leading them when you don't know what they do.
Yeah, so thank you for providing that valuable information, because I think many times we assume that in order to advance in certain departments, you have to know the department inside and out. So the information you're providing is valuable to us. So again, if you're just tuning in, we're speaking to Miss Catherine Philbert Lewis out in Long Island, New York, and she's telling us wonderful information on how to simply navigate corporate America if you're looking to advance. If you're not looking to advance and you're happy with where you are, then that's great. But if you're looking to advance beyond the position you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, it's really about networking. It's really about being able to put yourself out there and having a plan for yourself on the job.
Right. And don't forget I don't want to discount working hard. You have to provide results. So it doesn't matter how much networking you do and how good, you know, your circle is. If you're a poor performer and you don't produce results, people are not going to take a second look. It's hard work. It's hard work. You have to make sure that you're achieving goals and you're adding to the bottom line, because essentially that's what they're bringing you there for. But yeah, a big part of it is doing that. I remember I had said to a group of people, so when I worked in human resources, our role was in a support role. So we're supporting different organizations and operational groups. So a lot of people that I work with these days, I supported them as the HR rep. And a lot of these people, one of them was named new CEO. So I met these people very early on in their careers. but I had no clue that it worked that way, right? I mean, not that I haven't done okay, but I'm just saying, had I known what I know now, I would have networked differently with these people who are now in positions to help me advance. I mean, now you can make that up and stuff like that, make up the time. But back then, so many of the people that I supported and helped when they were general managers or, just band one or two managers, a lot of them now are VPs and, like senior executives and stuff. And you kind of go like, wow. So I say all that to say, it's never too early to start the networking process, and you never know who you're meeting along the way. So you treat everyone as if they can be a resource for you at some point, because you just don't know who you're having, and especially when you have the larger corporations where people move up in certain ways. You have to treat everybody as if, okay, at some point I may have a different interaction with that person, and what are they going to remember about me and my interaction with them?
Yeah. So thank you for being so honest with us in terms of you would have potentially network it differently. Now, would you say we're at somewhat of a disadvantage because, a lot of us come from the Caribbean. We have no one who's been in corporate America before us. So would you say we're at a little bit of a disadvantage because pretty much everything you learned on your own or you learned through a manager. So does that put us at a disadvantage?
Yeah, it does. Of course it does. And that's why it's important to reach back. People always talk about once you have the knowledge and you have the experience, it's important to share that. So at ConEd, there's a group of us from Dominica who network and keep in touch. Yeah, so we met each other after Hurricane Maria, actually. So none of us knew each other prior to that. And we somehow got connected after Hurricane Maria. We tried to do a few things and we stayed in touch after that. So together we talk about stuff like that, like how do you send back that knowledge, how do you help people going forward, to know like, okay, these are the things you have to, even from school, when you come up to school, nobody tells you the realities of that. Everybody thinks you come to America to go to school and it's great, nobody will say to you your payments, your loan payments may be late from the bank and the school is going to will harass you for it, or they may not allow you to go to school because they haven't received your payment yet if you're on some form of scholarship from the government or whatever the case it is. People don't tell you that. Or you might need to find somewhere else to live because, your welcome maybe run out. Stuff like that. And I mean, these are the realities, right? And not everybody goes through the same things, but these are the things we discuss all the time. So it's important to be able to say to the other folks coming up, like what to expect and to share that. And I always do that as much as I can. If it makes it easier for the next person coming up, then by all means. But you have to do that. You always have to reach back and help others that are coming.
Yeah, and thank you for that because certainly it puts us at an advantage when someone like you who've learned all the information that you now know can reach back and tell us. For anyone who's thinking of coming to America or who's here already, but who's not familiar with corporate America, what to expect, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and the opportunities that are available to you. Now, speak to us as a woman in corporate America. What have you experienced in the good, bad, ugly, wonderful?
So not horrible. So obviously my first job in the field, like I mentioned to you, I was younger and, and so you and I worked with people that probably were my age. So you have to establish yourself very early on as somebody who says, all right, I'm here to do a job and we'll respect each other. And that's all it is. I know there are a lot of horror stories in corporate America. I've heard them. Fortunately for me, I haven't been through that.
Good.
So I can't speak to that, but I'm well aware. I'm very well aware of some of the harassments and different things that female employees face in the workplace. What I will say is, so it's and that's not always the case, because it's unfair to say that how you establish yourself is how people will approach you, because we know that's not true. There are people who don't realize boundaries at all and they'll do whatever they want to do anyway. But I think a big part of it is really establishing as a person, like, I'm here to work and this is my commitment and that's what it is. And addressing people very early on. If somebody addresses you in a way that's inappropriate, you address that right on and you kind of, say, I'm not appreciative of that, or this is crossed the boundary. Going forward, let's not do that, or something along those lines. I've had to have difficult conversations like that about other employees. So as a manager in a group, if somebody tells you, hey, this person made an inappropriate comment or had an inappropriate contact, you have to address that. fortunately too, at the company where I am, we have a lot of avenues to do that. So it's now the DNI office, formerly EEO office, that people can go to. We have an ombudsman. There are various other, ways that you can make a complaint if you feel you're not being heard. But certainly it's a reality. I think not only with harassment and stuff like that, but as women, it's you have to prove yourself more for whatever reason. The statistics are there. Women get paid less. Women get promoted at a slower rate. So it's all of these things that you constantly have in the back of your mind, that you still have to do everything twice as better or twice as much as a male would do it in order to get the recognition. So it's not just about harassment, but just the recognition that as a female, you have to keep on going and working twice as hard. That's just the reality of it. The statistics prove it, and that's part of what we go through.
Well, I'm happy to hear that for the most part, it's been a good experience for you, and you don't have any especially difficult stories to share. So I'm really happy to hear that. But I think one of the concerns for me when I did work in a 9-to-5 corporate job was one of the reasons I didn't care to socialize outside of the job was because I always felt like there would be blurred lines. You go out, people want to go have drinks, and then people get a couple of drinks into them, and then the conversation changes, and now you're talking about something completely inappropriate, and then you have to go back to the office. So I just was not one for socializing outside of work.
It is, but it's interesting that you say that. So at the company where I am, there are so many husbands and wives at ConEd, and a lot of them met their spouse at work. So yes,
I don't know how I feel about that.
It's part of the culture here. It's not something that's frowned upon. So if somebody understands that you're dating, as long as the person does a report to you or is in your line of where you have the delegation, right? Then that's okay. But yes, a lot of people have met spouses at work and they're dating, and it's a good thing. It's part of the culture. People do that. I think we've had incidents too where people go out for casual drinks and then the conversation turns, and then the next day somebody's filing a formal complaint.
Yes.
So we've had that. We've absolutely had that. So you still have to, I always say, you never get too comfortable, even in a social setting. You have to remember that these are people that you work with. And there's some level of professionalism that you need to maintain. It doesn't matter whether you're at a bar, it doesn't matter whether you are at somebody's house, at a barbecue. Just, you always have to remember that these are ultimately your co-workers. And the next day you have to get up and go to work with them. And what are the thoughts going to be? Did you say something that have people now completely looking at you a completely different way, or make somebody question your judgment or your way of doing things? You have to be mindful of that. Never get too comfortable. It's good to socialize, it's good to network, but you always have to remember that these are people that you work with and they're not friends.
Yeah, that is a great point. And thank you so much for all the information you're sharing with us. Because I would say, yes, do the socializing because it is part of networking. But I would also add that keep the networking and the socializing almost like you were still in the work environment.
Right.
So anything you would not discuss if you were in the office, first of all, don't drink to the point where you don't know what you're saying anymore.
Exactly.
Number one. And even if you're in a different environment, you should be thinking, let me just keep the conversations I would normally have if we were in the office. So that way, you're steering clear of anything that might come back to haunt you.
Exactly. Like right now, it is very rare for me to attend like an after work function. Very, very, unless it's like a formal, let's say like a sponsorship dinner or something like that. It is a rare event where you will find me to say some group of people are just hanging out to have drinks. And I would do that. But it's just my decision. That's a decision I made a long time ago because I know how these things escalate quickly out of hand. And I don't ever want to be in that position. But if it's a formal sponsored dinner or, my boss is inviting us because he has a table that the company sponsored, I'll do stuff like that. But casual hangouts, that's my decision. I will not. With the group we have from Dominica, we do things together. That's a different group for me because we're home. It's a different group and we interact differently. But even if we were all in a work setting, our interaction would be different because we know better. It's just certain things that you make the decision not to do because you're well aware of how it can affect you way into your career. So
Yeah, so I think we're both saying the same thing. And what
yeah.
we're saying is we personally choose not to do it. And I think part of it is because we're both introverts. So we
Right.
personally
That's
choose
true.
not to do it. But it is a good thing to socialize and to network. But just be mindful that in the back of your mind, you're still thinking, well, this is a business opportunity. This is a business event. I'm not going to go spill every last detail about my life and my relationships, because for me, even if it's outside of the office, it is still a business decision. So thank you for raising all those wonderful points with us, Kathy. And again, last time we are joined today by Miss Catherine Philbert Lewis out of Long Island, and she is a director at ConEd in New York City. So as we get ready to wrap up, Kathy, do you have any advice for young girls looking to be in corporate America, or even someone who is not so young but looking to become a part of corporate America? What advice would you give them?
So there's a lot of opportunity. I think the first thing is to not limit yourself. So not because, and I'm a living example of it, right? So it's not because that you've studied one thing that you have to stay in that lane. Find ways to navigate through and prove yourself, and it's open. If you work in a company where you have these opportunities, take the opportunity. There's always someone willing to give you a chance. And then work hard. Like I can't stress that enough. I think providing results, presenting results, and making sure that you accomplish goals, it's key. I think when people, your work will speak for itself, and then all the other things will be icing on the cake. But we talk about networking all the time, huge, obviously, but just not limiting yourself, and make sure that you make use of your resources. The people who've done it before you, lean on people, right? They talk about the lean in circles. Lean on people to do that, and ask questions. And people are more than willing to help. I think people sometimes disregard that and assume that people may not be able. I think more so than I've ever seen, people are always willing to help, always answer a question, on help you navigate or think of things differently, or help you through, even though it's to do a resume or answering a question, or putting yourself in a position to appear, that you've met qualifications for a job. People are willing to do that. So it's putting yourself out there, asking for help if you need it, and not limiting yourself.
Yeah, I certainly agree about putting yourself out there. So I know that your son is off to college and you're about to have more time on your hands. So what is next for you? What is next for you?
Well, so yes, he will be gone soon. And I don't know. I honestly haven't thought that far. And I don't know what I'll do without him here. He talks about wanting to go away. So we'll see. But I mean, certainly, in terms of career, I mean, the way that we're set up in ConEd, there's a lot more room for improvement. And certainly, I would like, to do that one day. I think in terms of family-wise, I look forward to supporting my son through his college process and being part of that. Hopefully I'm in another role that gives me more time to experience that, right? So, I don't know. I'm looking forward to what the future holds for me. I know that I think in terms of my job, I've done a lot in this current role where I'm comfortable enough to say that, hey, I'm looking forward to the next challenge. So, I mean, and more volunteer stuff. So I do a lot of volunteer work. I look forward to continuing that, which I completely enjoy. So, these three things that I mentioned, look forward to them. But, certainly I'm open. I'm open to whatever the universe has for me. But I intend to do my part to make sure that I kind of propel myself and keep moving up and moving forward.
Yes, and you sound wonderfully fulfilled. So I'm
I am
happy
actually.
to hear that.
I am. I do. I have to say I am. It's been a long road, and like I said, not without the challenges, but I am. It's been good. I've been blessed. I've had a lot of help along the way, so it's not all just on me, and I am very appreciative of it. And to the point where I can talk to you guys about it, right? So who would have thought? I would have never, ever imagined. So thankful for that as well. Thank you. I always say, like, what do I have to offer in terms of that? But Thank you so much.
You've offered us a lot, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you and learning even more from you. So thank you for being on Untapped Potential today.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Have a good evening.